I never thought I'd find myself in a situation that would turn my life upside down, but here I am, pouring my heart out to whoever might listen. My name is Mark, and I've been married to Jessica for nearly 6 years. We had one of those relationships that looked perfect from the outside. We both worked hard, had a few good friends, and enjoyed our carefree weekends, usually spent binge-watching shows or going out for brunch. But looking back, there were signs, little cracks in the facade that I chose to ignore. At first, it was just the late nights at work. Jessica, who I ended up finding out was more interested in her social media presence than her job, started coming home later than usual. She'd say she was at the office preparing for some big campaign. I believed her. After all, she had always been ambitious. It was easy to chalk up her long hours to dedication and enthusiasm, but then there were the subtle changes. The little things that started to nag at me. She became more secretive with her phone and less interested in spending quality time together. I'll never forget the day it all came crashing down. It was a regular Tuesday evening. I was finishing up dinner when I noticed that Jessica was unusually quiet. Normally, she'd be chatting away about her day. Instead, she kept glancing at her phone, biting her lip and tapping away while I tried to make small talk. Then she abruptly excused herself to take a work call. My gut instinct kicked in. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. I decided to do a little digging. I wasn't proud of it, but I felt justified. I went into our bedroom and grabbed her phone, which she had left lying on the kitchen counter unlocked, a glaring mistake. As I scrolled through her messages, my heart raced. I stumbled across exchanges that made my stomach drop. There was a guy named Ryan, an influencer who'd burst onto the scene recently, and apparently they had been flirting. It felt innocent at first but quickly escalated. Suggestive memes, heart emojis, and comments that made my blood boil. The worst part. There were plans for them to meet up. My heart sank as I read her texts, filled with lies about working late and how she promised to be home soon. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. This wasn't just a little flirtation, it was an outright affair. I was devastated, and I couldn't believe my wife was betraying me with some guy whose life revolved around posting selfies and promoting protein shakes. Once I had all the evidence I needed, I knew I had to confront her. I waited for her to come home, heart pounding, rehearsing what I would say in my mind. When she walked through the door, I could tell something was off again. She had that guilty look on her face, the one that made me cringe. I called her name and she turned, instantly realizing something wasn't right. "Jessica, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked alarmed, her eyes darting between my face and the ground. "What's wrong?" she asked, feigning innocence, but her voice trembled. I hit her with the truth, all the raw emotions spilling out. I told her I knew about Ryan, how I had seen the messages, and how deeply her betrayal cut me. Instead of the remorse I expected, she became defensive, her expression shifting from shock to anger. "You went through my phone. That's invasion of privacy, Mark," she snapped. Her response was an emotional whirlwind. She tried to downplay the affair, claiming it was just a stupid fling and that it didn't mean anything. But that only made me angrier. She insisted she loved me and that Ryan was just someone to vent to. I could barely process her excuses as I fought the urge to scream. The confrontation spiraled, filled with accusations and tears. I wanted so desperately for her to take responsibility, but it felt like I was talking to a wall. At that moment, I realized the woman I married was gone. Instead, I was left with this stranger who was willing to lie right to my face. The emotional toll was heavy. I went from shock to anger, then sadness, replaying our happy moments in my mind. I felt shattered, like my entire life had turned into a sick joke. It hurt deeply, knowing that while I had been planning our future together, she had been planning a future with someone else. What was I supposed to do next? How could I ever trust her again? I needed to figure out a plan, a way to reclaim my life and confront the reality of our relationship. What would I do? Would I fight for my marriage or would I walk away? I spent sleepless nights processing everything, weighing my options. A part of me wanted to forgive her, but the bigger part was screaming to find a way to make her feel the consequences of her actions. That's when the idea began to take shape in my mind. a way to expose her infidelity and the influencer she had been with, to show her just how serious her actions were. Little did I know that this was just the beginning of a long and twisted journey. I spent the next few days in a haze of confusion and heartbreak. I felt like a ghost walking through my own life, going through the motions while my mind was consumed with thoughts of betrayal and revenge. The anger coursed through my veins, fueling a determination that I didn't know I had. I needed to take control of this situation and turn the tables on Jessica and Ryan. I started by digging deeper into Jessica's online life. She had built up a social media presence over the years, and I realized that her relationship with Ryan wasn't just some casual fling. It was part of her carefully curated image as a lifestyle influencer. This realization only fueled my fire. She loved that world of likes, comments, and followers, and I felt a sense of satisfaction knowing that I could expose everything she held dear. I spent hours going through Jessica's social media accounts, looking for anything I could use. It was easier than I thought. There were countless posts of her and Ryan together at events, tagged pictures, and even comments that were far too intimate for just friends. As I pieced everything together, I felt a mix of rage and exhilaration. This was my ammunition. To make things easier, I created a fake account to avoid raising any suspicion. I began following influencers in her circle, monitoring their posts, and looking for the perfect moment to strike. I needed to gather evidence that showed not only her infidelity, but also the facade of her seemingly perfect life. The more I uncovered, the more I plotted my revenge. Every day I became more relentless, scrolling through their lives. Jessica and Ryan were living it up, attending events and basking in the attention they received. My heart twisted with each picture of them together, laughing and enjoying each other's company. Each image was a reminder of the betrayal I had endured, and I was determined to shatter that illusion. I decided to focus on their supposed sponsorship deals, the ones that made them look like they were living the high life. It turned out that there were several brands that Jessica had worked with that were controversial at best. I began reaching out to these brands, posing as a concerned consumer who had seen their products being promoted by an untrustworthy influencer. My messages were detailed, packed with accusations and evidence of Jessica's affair. I wanted to make sure they understood the reality behind the glittering facade. I felt powerful for the first time in days. As I watched my emails send, I felt a rush of adrenaline. The thought of Jessica receiving a call from one of her sponsors, questioning her integrity and character, sent waves of satisfaction coursing through me. I was no longer the victim. I was the one wielding the sword. The days turned into a week, and I was just waiting. Fallout. I kept an eye on Jessica, trying to gauge her mood. She seemed oblivious to what was coming, which only made me feel more in control. I could see her still trying to maintain her influencer persona, posting pictures of herself smiling with motivational captions about love and life. It was infuriating and almost laughable, knowing the truth behind those smiles. Then the moment arrived. I was sitting at home, scrolling through my phone when I saw it. One of the brands had released a statement. They had cut ties with Jessica due to the evidence I'd provided, citing concerns about her integrity and character. I couldn't help but smirk. This was just the beginning. I watched as Jessica's world began to crumble. Her social media presence was starting to plummet, and with it, her followers began to question her credibility. She had worked so hard to build this life, and all it took was a few clicks and some well-placed messages to bring it all crashing down. I knew I would have to confront her again soon, but I wanted to let the situation simmer a bit. This was a delicate game of chess, and I was in the driver's seat. I could feel the tension in the air, but it also left me feeling hollow. Was this really what I wanted? While the satisfaction of revenge was intoxicating, it didn't erase the hurt or fill the void that Jessica's betrayal had left in my heart. As the days passed, I tried to prepare myself for the inevitable confrontation. I knew she would realize something was wrong when her followers started to dwindle and her sponsors pulled out. I wondered how she would react. Would she lash out again? Would she beg for forgiveness? Would she try to manipulate me into feeling sorry for her? but deep down I knew I had to see this through. She had chosen her path, and it was time for her to face the consequences of her actions. I wasn't doing this just for revenge. I was doing it for myself, to reclaim my dignity and to remind her that her choices carried weight. The emotional turmoil still lingered, but I felt empowered by the thought of standing my ground. One evening, as I sat in the living room scrolling through articles about her loss of sponsorships, I heard the front door open. Jessica walked in, her face pale and her expression a mix of confusion and anger. She had clearly just discovered what was happening, and I felt a strange mixture of anticipation and dread. This was it, the moment we would have to confront everything head-on. I took a deep breath, ready to meet her in this chaotic storm of emotions. Jessica stepped into the living room, and I could see the realization wash over her face as she pieced together the fragments of her crumbling world. She looked different, disheveled, almost vulnerable. For the first time since I discovered her affair, I felt a flicker of empathy, but that flicker quickly extinguished as anger surged within me. She had done this to herself. "Mark," she said, her voice shaky as she approached me, "I need to talk to you." "Talk," I replied, my tone dripping with sarcasm. "Is that what you call it? Because I think we've already done enough talking, don't you think?" She paused, biting her lip, clearly trying to compose herself. "I found out what happened with the sponsors," she said, her voice steadying. "Is this your doing? Did you report me?" "Do you really need to ask?" I shot back. "You think I would just sit back and watch you destroy our marriage while you were off playing house with some influencer? You brought this on yourself, Jessica." Her expression shifted from confusion to anger and she crossed her arms defensively. "You're being ridiculous. It was just a fling, a mistake. I never meant to hurt you. I love you." The word struck me like a lightning bolt. Love. How could she still say that after everything? "You love me." I repeated incredulously. "You love me while you're texting Ryan about your little secret rendezvous." I wasn't going to let it go any further, she exclaimed, desperation creeping into her voice. "It was just a stupid mistake, one I regret more than anything." I couldn't help but roll my eyes. "Regret? You think regret can just wash away the lies? You think you can just come back and play the victim after everything you've done?" Tears welled in her eyes, and for a moment I felt a pang of guilt. But then I remembered the pain I'd felt when I discovered her. Betrayal, the late nights, the secrets, the lies. I had given her everything and she had thrown it all away for a few cheap thrills. "You need to understand that I was feeling lost," she continued, her voice trembling. "I thought I could handle it all. I thought I could be the perfect wife and the ultimate influencer, but it all spiraled out of control. Please just give me a chance to explain. I want to fix this." Her pleas fell on deaf ears. I wasn't interested in her explanations anymore. Any trust I had left was shattered, like glass that couldn't be pieced back together. "Fix this? How?" "By pretending it never happened. By acting like our marriage is still in one piece. You've already made your choice." The tension in the room became almost unbearable as silence stretched between us. Jessica's face contorted with frustration, and I could see the wheels turning in her head as she tried to come up with a convincing argument, something that would sway me back to her side. "Please, Mark," she said, her voice breaking, "I'm begging you. I'll do anything to make this right. I'll end things with Ryan. I'll stop posting. No," I interrupted sharply. "It's too late for that. You've already shown me who you are, and no amount of begging will change that." That wasn't entirely true. A part of me wanted to believe that maybe we could work through this, but the deeper part of my heart was screaming that I'd never be able to trust her again. "Do you even understand what you did?" I pressed on. "You threw away everything we built together. You didn't just cheat on me, you shattered the foundation of our relationship. You've made a mockery of our marriage, and I won't stand for it." Jessica's expression shifted once more, this time a mix of anger and realization. "So what now? You're just going to throw me away? How can you do this? How can you just give up on us?" Her words hit me like a brick, and I felt the weight of my decision pressing down on me. This was it, the moment when I had to decide how to move forward. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "I'm not throwing you away. You did that to yourself. I need time to think about what I want." I could see the panic flickering in her eyes, and for a brief second I felt a twinge of sympathy. But then I remembered the pain she caused, the betrayal that had turned my life upside down. I couldn't allow myself to feel sorry for her. It would only lead to more heartache. "Mark, please," she pleaded, her voice now soft, almost fragile. "I'll do better. Just give me a chance. I can change." I looked at her, a mix of emotions swirling within me. Change. You've shown me who you are, and now it's my turn to show you who I can be without you. I need to take back control of my life. With that, I turned away from her, the decision solidifying in my mind. I wouldn't let her manipulation draw me back in. I needed to focus on myself, to reclaim my identity, and to heal. I was done playing the role of the victim. I had fought my way to this moment, and I wasn't going to let her guilt me into staying. As I walked away, I could hear her soft sobs, and my heart ached for the memories of what we once had. But I knew I had to be stronger than the shattered pieces of our past. As I sat in the silence of the living room, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of relief. I was ready to redefine my life, to move forward without the weight of her betrayal. It was time to take the next steps in my journey, whatever that would look like. I realized I wasn't just seeking revenge. I was seeking freedom, the freedom to live my life on my own terms. I had made my choice, and now I had to stick to it. But first, I needed to gather my strength for the next phase of this battle. After the confrontation, I felt a strange mix of liberation and uncertainty. The air in the house felt heavy, as if it was saturated with the weight of our crumbling relationship. While the initial adrenaline rush of confronting Jessica had faded, a newfound clarity began to settle in. I needed to use this time wisely, not only to execute my plan for revenge, but also to figure out what I truly wanted moving forward. I spent the next few days keeping my distance from Jessica. I had no desire to engage in her attempts to win me back or to hear her excuses. She tried to manipulate me before, and I wasn't going to fall for it this time. I busied myself with finding evidence to further expose her infidelity and the influencer lifestyle that had led to our downfall. As I dove deeper into her social media presence, I realized I needed to dig up the dirt. I started compiling a dossier of her interactions with Ryan and other influencers, focusing on their questionable sponsorships and the products they promoted. The more I uncovered, the more I felt the satisfaction of bringing their facade crashing down. One night, while researching, I stumbled into a treasure trove of information, a community of disgruntled followers and former sponsors who had also been burned by Jessica and Ryan's deceptive practices. I joined forums and started engaging with them, sharing my story and the evidence I had compiled. It was cathartic, and I felt a sense of camaraderie with others who had been misled by their glossy social media facades. I learned that Jessica and Ryan weren't just minor players in the influencer game. They had built an entire empire based on deception. The more I shared, the more people were willing to come forward with their own stories, creating a momentum that could potentially bring their empire crumbling down. My heart raced at the thought of unleashing the truth on the world, watching as their carefully constructed lives disintegrated around them. I also began to craft my own narrative, a story that would not only highlight Jessica's betrayal, but also show the darker side of influencer culture. I wanted to expose how easy it was for people to hide behind screens, to lie and manipulate for likes and sponsorships. I envisioned writing a comprehensive article that showcased everything I had learned. It would be my way of taking charge, of reclaiming my narrative, and holding Jessica accountable for her choices. As the days turned into weeks, I made steady progress. I gathered testimonials from followers who had felt misled by Jessica's promotions, uncovering how they had wasted money on products that didn't deliver. I reached out to brands that were in the process of severing ties with her, encouraging them to share their experiences and thoughts on why they were distancing themselves. And then one fateful evening, while I was preparing to finalize my article, I received a message from a former employee of one of the brands Jessica had promoted. They were willing to go on the record and share insider information about Jessica and Ryan's shady practices, revealing how they had falsely inflated their engagement metrics and manipulated their follower counts. It was the bombshell I needed to take my piece from a simple exposé to a full-blown investigation. As I pieced everything together, I felt a sense of anticipation building inside me. I was finally taking control of my narrative, fighting back against everything that had hurt me. With each word I wrote, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about standing up for myself and exposing the lies that had infiltrated my life. But amid the excitement, I began to worry about the potential consequences. What if this spiraled out of control? What if Jessica retaliated? I had to remind myself that I was doing this to heal and to reclaim my life. I had to stay focused on why I was writing. This was about more than just revenge. It was about honesty. The night before I planned to publish my article, I sat in the dim light of my living room with a mixture of anxiety and exhilaration coursing through me. I could feel the weight of my decision pressing down on me, but I also felt empowered. I was no longer Mark, the betrayed husband. I was Mark, the man fighting for his truth. The next morning I hit publish. As I watched the words go live, my heart raced. I knew there would be fallout, but I also knew that the truth needed to be told. Almost immediately, messages started pouring in from supporters and critics alike. People were sharing my article, commenting on it, and engaging with the story I had presented. I braced myself for the storm that would follow. I knew Jessica would see it soon, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction at the thought of her reaction. I had finally taken the power back, and there was no turning back now. The fallout was immediate. News outlets picked up the story, and suddenly, Jessica and Ryan were at the center of a media frenzy. Their followers began to dwindle even more, and I watched as their carefully constructed lives began to unravel in real time. It was surreal, almost like watching a train wreck in slow motion. As I observed the chaos unfold, I felt a strange mix of emotions. I had achieved what I set out to do, but I also felt the weight of what that meant. My heart was still heavy with the loss of my marriage, but I was beginning to understand that sometimes letting go is the only way to free yourself. Jessica would eventually confront me about the article, and I knew that the next round of our battle would be critical. I had exposed the truth, but I also knew that I had to prepare for her counterattack. Would she try to twist the narrative? Would she attempt to manipulate my emotions again? I braced myself for whatever came next, knowing that I would stand my ground. I had fought hard to reclaim my story, and I refused to let her dictate how it would end. Now that I had set the wheels in motion, I was ready for whatever came my way. The war was far from over, and I was determined to emerge victorious. The aftermath of my article was like riding a roller coaster that I couldn't control. As the story gained traction, messages began flooding in from all directions. Some were supportive, others were critical, and a few were downright vicious. I braced myself for the inevitable confrontation with Jessica, knowing that she would not take this lightly. A couple of days after the article went live, the barrage of notifications and comments had reached a fever pitch. I was sitting at home when I heard a loud knock at the door. I could feel my heart rate quicken as I opened it, revealing Jessica standing there with an expression that was a mix of fury and desperation. "What the hell, Mark?" she spat, stepping into the house uninvited, her voice dripping with indignation. "You had no right to do this to me." I closed the door behind her, keeping my composure as I faced her. "I had every right. You brought this upon yourself, Jessica. You can't just treat people like they're disposable and expect to get away with it." Her eyes narrowed as she stepped closer, her voice lowering. "You think this is about you. This isn't just hurting me, it's hurting my career. Ryan and I were building something, and now it's all gone because of your petty revenge." "Petty revenge," I echoed, incredulous. "This isn't about revenge, it's about exposing the truth. Maybe if you hadn't been so busy lying to everyone, you wouldn't be in this position." She ran a hand through her hair, frustration spilling out of her. "You think destroying my career is going to make you feel better? You think it's going to fix our marriage? You're wrong, Mark. None of this is going to bring back what we had. Don't act like you care about what we had," I countered, my anger flaring up again. "You've been living a lie, and I was the one who had to pay for it. I didn't want to expose you, but you left me with no choice." Her expression softened for a moment, and I could see the cracks forming in her facade. "I made a mistake, Mark. I'm not the only one to blame here. You could have talked to me, instead of airing our dirty laundry for the world to see. If you really loved me, you would have at least tried to save us." The emotional whirlwind of her words struck me. Was it too late to consider reconciliation? I felt the remnants of love and affection battling with the betrayal and hurt. But as soon as I opened my mouth to respond, the weight of everything that had happened came crashing down on me. "No," I said firmly, shaking my head. "I can't just pretend everything is okay. You made your choices, Jessica. You chose to betray me and you chose to hurt me. I won't let you manipulate me into feeling guilty for standing up for myself." Jessica's face twisted with emotion, and I could see the anger giving way to desperation. "Maybe I did make mistakes," she admitted quietly, "but can't we start over? I'll do anything, Mark. I'll make things right." I took a deep breath, my resolve hardening. "You don't get to decide that anymore. I've made my choice, and so have you. I cannot trust you, and I need to move on. This isn't just about you, this is about me too." She stepped back, her eyes wide with disbelief. "So that's it. You'll just throw everything away without even giving it a chance?" "Yes," I replied, my voice steady. "I'm done giving you chances. You've had enough of those." As I watched her processing my words, I realized how far we had fallen. The woman I once loved had become a stranger, and I could no longer see a future for us. The pain of betrayal was too raw, too real. I wouldn't let her drag me back into a toxic cycle of lies and manipulation. Silence hung in the air like a thick fog. I knew that this wasn't the closure we both needed, but it was the finality I required. With that thought in mind, I turned away from her, facing the window that overlooked the street. I needed to gather my thoughts, but I could feel her presence still behind me, lingering like a ghost. "Mark, please," she said, her voice trembling. "I can't lose you. I can't lose everything I've worked for." I turned back to her, my heart heavy. "You already lost it, Jessica. You chose to put social media and Ryan above our marriage. You put your desires before our commitment. You gave it all away, and now you want me to pick up the pieces." Her shoulders sagged, and I could see the fight leaving her. "What do you want from me?" she asked, tears brimming in her eyes. "Honestly, I want you to understand the consequences of your actions. I want you to feel what it's like to lose everything you took for granted. Maybe then you'll learn not to treat people like pawns in your little game." With that, I turned away, leaving her standing there, a mixture of confusion and regret on her face. I walked back into the living room, the weight of my decision settling in. I knew it was time to cut ties once and for all. In the days that followed, things escalated even further. The media picked up on the fallout from my article, and soon Jessica was faced with public scrutiny like she'd never experienced before. Her followers began to question her integrity, and the influencer persona she had cultivated began to crumble in front of everyone's eyes. It was surreal to watch. Part of me felt a sense of satisfaction, but another part felt the pang of loss for the love we'd shared. I knew I was doing the right thing, but that didn't mean it was easy. I had to remind myself that Jessica had made her choices, and I was merely giving her a taste of the consequences. Eventually, I received messages from former friends and acquaintances who had distanced themselves during our marriage. They reached out, expressing their support and understanding. It was comforting to know that I wasn't alone in this mess, that others were willing to stand by me as I navigated this new chapter of my life. As the dust settled, I began focusing on myself again, on healing and rediscovering who I was outside of my marriage. I reached out to friends who had been supportive over the years, and we began to reconnect over shared interests. Slowly but surely, I started to rebuild my life. I still had moments of anger and sadness, but they were no longer all-consuming. I was learning to let go of the weight Jessica had placed on my heart, and it felt liberating. I started to find joy in little things, hiking on weekends, trying new restaurants, and even exploring new hobbies. And through it all, I continued to reflect on the lessons I had learned. Trust is fragile, and love should never be taken for granted. Life is too short to allow betrayal to define us. It was time to embrace this new beginning, to step forward with strength and courage, and to create a life that was truly mine. But as Jessica's world fell apart, I knew there would still be one final showdown, a moment that would define the end of our relationship. I could feel it coming, and I was prepared to face whatever she had left to throw at me. I was finally ready to take a stand and claim my future. The final confrontation came sooner than I expected. I had settled into a new routine, focusing on myself and rediscovering who I was outside of the shadow of my marriage. Then one evening, as I was enjoying a quiet night at home, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Jessica standing there once again, looking disheveled and defeated. "Mark," she began, her voice trembling, "I need to talk to you, please." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever emotional play she was about to unleash. "What more is there to say, Jessica? I thought we were clear on where we stand." "Just hear me out," she pleaded, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "I know I messed up, a lot, but I've been reflecting on everything and I realized how much I took for granted." "Reflection?" I scoffed. "You mean the kind of reflection that comes only after your entire world crashes down around you?" "Okay, yes. I was living in this bubble, thinking I could have it all, the perfect marriage, the social media fame, without considering the consequences," she admitted, her voice cracking. "But losing everything has opened my eyes. I see what I lost and I see the pain I caused you." I didn't say anything, allowing her to continue. Part of me wanted to give her a chance to explain, to hear her out, but another part of me was still reeling from the betrayal. "Mark, I'm sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. I was caught up in a world that made me feel important, and I lost sight of what truly mattered," she continued, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I can't take back what I did, but I want to make amends." "Amends?" I repeated, my voice laced with disbelief. "How do you plan to do that? You think saying sorry is enough after everything? You think you can just flip a switch and make it all better?" "I know it won't be easy," she said, desperation evident in her voice. "But I want to show you that I can change. I want to rebuild your trust. Please, just give me a chance." I looked at her, searching for sincerity in her eyes, but all I saw was the woman who had betrayed me. "Jessica, you don't understand. This isn't just about you wanting to make things right. It's about me needing to protect myself. I can't go back to what we had. I won't allow myself to be hurt like that again." Her shoulders slumped and I could see the weight of my words crashing down on her. "I get it," she said quietly, her voice almost a whisper. "I've lost everything because I chose to prioritize the wrong things. I've lost you." The vulnerability in her voice tugged at something deep within me, but I quickly pushed it aside. "You did this to yourself, Jessica. You made your choices, and now you have to live with the consequences. I'm done being the puppet in your game." She took a step back, visibly shaken. I could see her grappling with the reality of her situation. I thought, I thought maybe I could convince you to give me one more chance, that maybe we could find a way to start over." "It's too late for that," I replied, my tone firm. "I've spent enough time drowning in the pain you caused. I need to move forward, and that means letting go of you." Tears continued to stream down her face, and for a brief moment I felt a flicker of sympathy, but I quickly squashed it. I had to remind myself why I was doing this, why I needed to reclaim my life. "Mark, please don't do this," she cried. "I know I messed up, but I can change. I want to change." "Change isn't something I can just accept on a whim, Jessica. You've shown me who you really are, and while I once loved that person, I can't turn a blind eye to the reality of what you've done." Her gaze dropped to the floor, the fight seemingly leaving her. "I'm sorry," she said again, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry for everything." "I know you are," I replied, my voice softer now. "But sorry isn't enough. You've broken something that can't be repaired. I need to put myself first for once." I watched her process my words, the realization of our finality sinking in. The woman who had once been my partner now stood before me as a shadow of her former self, grasping at straws in a desperate attempt to salvage what was lost. "I guess this is it then," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah, I guess it is," I replied, feeling an unexpected heaviness in my chest. The act of letting go felt monumental, yet strangely necessary. "I hope you find happiness, Mark," she said, her voice trembling as she turned to leave. "You too, Jessica." "I truly hope you do," I replied, my heart aching for the love that once was. As she walked out, I felt a mixture of relief and sadness. It was over. No more lies, no more deceit, just the painful aftermath of what once was. I took a deep breath, allowing myself to feel the weight of my decision. I had fought for my truth, and now I was ready to embrace whatever came next. Over the next few weeks, I continued to rebuild my life. I sought therapy to process everything, to heal from the wounds inflicted by Jessica's betrayal. I surrounded myself with supportive friends and began new hobbies, exploring interests that had long been neglected. With each passing day, the pain of the past began to fade, a distant memory of a life that no longer belonged to me. I found solace in the freedom of my choices, the autonomy to live without the burdens of betrayal clouding my mind. I learned that letting go was not just an act of revenge, it was a necessity for reclaiming my life. As I moved forward, I carried with me the lessons I had learned about love, trust, and the importance of valuing myself. I was ready to step into the future, unencumbered by the chains of my past, and though the road ahead was uncertain, I felt a sense of hope blossoming within me. Life was waiting, and I was finally ready to embrace it.